Welcome to the Explainer. Sometimes the most practical advice comes from the most unexpected places. Today, we're diving into a 2,500-year-old story about a king and a monk that gives us a timeless and honestly super useful guide for our actions.
All right, so let's set the scene. You've got King Pasenadi of Kosala, really powerful ruler, riding high on his magnificent royal elephant. And then he spots someone just walking along. It's Ananda, one of the Buddha's chief disciples.
Now think about it. The king could have just kept going, right? He's the king. But instead, he's filled with this deep respect. So he stops his entire entourage and sends a messenger ahead with a surprisingly humble request. Then, the king does something pretty remarkable for someone in his position. He actually gets off his elephant and walks over to Ananda on foot. That's a huge gesture. It's a clear signal that he values wisdom way more than status. He asks if they could chat for a bit by the riverbank.
So they sit down by the river, and the king gets right to the point. He doesn't ask about power or riches or anything like that. He asks about ethics. He really wants to understand the foundation of what makes an action right or wrong. And he's asking someone he knows has the answer.
Ananda's response is so direct. A simple no. He confirms that the Buddha's actions, whether through his body, his speech, or even his mind, are completely blameless. You can just imagine how this clarity must have struck the king. Okay, and this is where it gets really good. The king is like, okay, I get it, but what does that mean? He wants a practical definition he can actually use. So Ananda starts breaking it down for him, piece by piece. So the very first layer is this idea of akasalo, which translates to unskillful. Think about that. It's not just about being bad or evil. It's about a lack of skill, acting in a way that just doesn't lead to a good result. It's clumsy. And building on that, an unskillful action is savadjo, which means blameworthy. This adds a moral weight to it. It's not just clumsy. It's an action that carries fault, something you could actually be held accountable for. So what does it mean to be blameworthy in the real world? This is where we move from the abstract to the concrete. A blameworthy action is sati abhijikto. It is actively harmful. It's not just wrong in theory, it actually causes real affliction or distress. And here it is, the ultimate litmus test. How do you know if something is truly harmful? You look at the results. A harmful action is defined by its outcome, which is dukkha vipako. Literally, it has painful results. It leads to suffering. That's the final proof. So, what Ananda gives the king is this incredibly simple diagnostic tool. Is an action censorable? Well, ask yourself, does it cause suffering for me, for other people, for both of us? And here's a big one. Does it make these negative, unskillful qualities grow inside me? If the answer is yes, that's your sign. Avoid it. The king totally gets it, and naturally, he asks about the opposite. What about blameless conduct? And Ananda explains that it's a perfect mirror image. It's defined by being skillful, kusalo, harmless, abhyabajo, and leading to pleasant results, sukha vipako. So a skillful, or kusalo, action is praiseworthy precisely because it's harmless, or abhyabajo. And how do we know it's harmless? Because its consequences, its results, are pleasant and lead to well-being. It's a whole ethical framework that's based entirely on the outcome. And right here, this is a practical guide for us right now. Before you hit send on that email or post that comment or even make a promise, you can just ask, does this lead to well-being for me, for others, for both of us? Does it help positive, skillful qualities grow? It's such a clear framework for basically any choice we have to make. The king is just completely floored by this. The clarity is so powerful for him. He's so moved that he blurts out that this wisdom is worth more than his greatest treasure, even his own royal elephant. You can practically feel his aha moment. Of course, the king knows that a monk living a simple life can't exactly accept an elephant. So he wants to show his gratitude, but in a way that's actually useful and appropriate. He offers a beautiful, fine outer robe called a bāhitika. And this is amazing. The king shows that he didn't just hear the lesson, he understood it. He explains how this one gift can create a whole ripple of benefit, a chain of skillful action that flows through the community. His gift itself has become an act of skillful conduct. He's already putting it into practice. But wait, the story's not quite over. Later on, Ananda goes to see the Buddha, and he recounts the entire conversation he had with King Pasenadi, from that first humble request all the way to the thoughtful gift of the robe. And the Buddha completely validates the whole thing. He praises the king for being wise enough to seek out this knowledge and for his genuine desire to understand. And he praises Ananda for explaining these deep ideas with such perfect clarity. I mean, that's the ultimate seal of approval. And that's what brings this 2,500-year-old conversation right into our lives today. That simple, ancient test, does this cause harm or does it create well-being, is an incredibly powerful tool we can use right now. It's a guide not for some distant, enlightened future, but for the very next choice you're about to make.